The Rockpile Report.
Buffalo, New York is going to be the epicenter of every stargazing nerd's wet dream.
With Buffalo Bills season ticket holder, Drew Geter.
If there was ever a time to break out Skyline Chili, it's when the Bills are 5-2, right?
The Rockpile Report. The pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Everybody to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Geer. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And guys, we made it. We did the thing. We made it to the bye week. The bye week is here, and I don't know. I feel like in years past, when you take a look at what the NFL bye week is supposed to mean for you and your fellow football fans, it's supposed to be like it usually gives you a chance to kind of just like take a deep breath, goose fraba, and watch other teams play that you don't normally get to see. It feels strange this year because I feel like we've already had a whole bunch of that, haven't we?
Well, what's your preference for a bye week? A lot of people, like me, I go, give me a bye week middle to end of the season.
Well, for sure.
Where do you sit on... Where do you want the Bills to have their bye?
Well, you sure as hell don't want it early. Like, what did the Kansas City Chiefs had their bye week 6 this year, I want to say?
Something like that.
I sure as hell don't want that. And in fact, Chris, if you look, I mean, you don't have to. I think a few years ago, didn't the Bills have one as early as like week 5?
It's possible.
It was like 2022. If you want to give that a Goog, the Bills 2022 schedule. I feel like it was 21 or 22. We had a bye week before week 7. And so this is like the perfect spot for it. It's before a major holiday.
Week 7 bye in 22.
Week 7 bye in 22. Early in the season just kind of sucks. I don't know. I don't like it. Because you have such a long way to go. And, you know, I feel like that's the Chiefs are probably feeling a little bit of that fatigue now. Where usually the bye week it's only 1 week, but you think about the amount of treatment that these players get on their bodies on a weekly basis for various nagging injuries. Like, there's a reason that they talk about and calculate how many games each team plays against teams coming off their bye, because it presents an advantage. But that advantage gets wasted when you have it early in the season, like in the first quarter of the season. So with that said, I think this is the perfect time for it. But it's weird for fans who watch the game because realistically, I think that we've been doing this all season, haven't we? 3 games out of our 9. So 1/3 or our 10 game. What are we at? 9-2. So we're 11 games in now. Out of that, 3 of them have been played on Mondays and Thursdays. So we've already had 3 football weekends where our team was going to play that week. We just didn't have anything to do on Sunday. Now, it happened right in Mark Smith's favorite part of the season, fall, because fall is elite.
Second on the list.
I'm sure. What's your favorite season?
Dude, come on. The winter is number 1. You're going to power rank seasons. Number 1, winter. 2, fall. 3, spring, and number 4, dead last, summer.
Okay, see, if I was going to try to guess how you would have ranked those, I would have said 1, summer, because it's the only time of the year where it's acceptable for Chris to rollerblade by the waterfront shirtless. Like, if he does that now, he's probably going to get tasered for looking like someone who shouldn't be near playgrounds. I then probably would have gone. Also, heat doesn't bother you. I've watched you walk around in the heat wave game. Guys, the heat wave game, the Denver Broncos at Buffalo Bills game in 2017, where it was over 107 degrees on the field, and the stadium ran out of water. Chris was wearing jeans that day, right? I sweat through a jersey. I sweat through my shorts while I was wearing them. Chris walking around in a t-shirt and pants.
You got to remember, I lived in Atlanta, so I'm used to it, but that's why summer's dead last. You haven't lived until you have walked with a shopping cart from Publix to your car and you're sweating. Just from walking from Publix to your car. Now, that might be a reason.
No, I'm not going to lie. I have done that, but only because I was 350 pounds.
That might happen. The reason that people don't return their carts to the corral is probably because they were sweating while they were unloading their groceries into their car.
So you're blaming heat on people in your neighborhood being garbage.
Yes.
Interesting. But so with that said, the seasons, like having a bunch of fall weekends where you're not really watching football, you're able to accomplish a lot. Pumpkin farms and what else? Light construction around the house.
Yeah. Closing
swimming pools, like, dad shit.
I stole pumpkins once from Tops.
What's the statute of limitations on that? I hope they have you arrested.
I mean, have you been to a Tops where they have pumpkins, where they keep them?
Of course I don't go to Tops. I have a job.
Outside.
I have a job. I don't have to shop at Tops.
They keep them outside. This was like in 2019, maybe? They just keep them outside. They're free.
They just keep them outside. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're such an idiot. Pumpkin carving with your children, not stealing them. There's all kinds of things we did with our fall, and it's because of the way the schedule laid out. So I don't feel like this weekend is really anything special. And also, that Sunday night football game we played, Sunday night football sucks. If it's like away, when it's home, like for the 49ers game, you get to throw an epic tailgate.
If you can get there early enough.
When it's Sunday night football away, you just spend the whole day being like, well, I'd like a beer, but I better not have one because otherwise I won't make it to see the game. And then the game starts and you're like, well, I'd like a beer, but it's 9:00 now. I can't start now.
See the last game of the season last year where we played the Dolphins Sunday Night Football in Miami with the division on the line. You had to wait that whole day for that game to start, and you don't want to get fucking hammered by 4 because you have a family.
Yeah, sure, that's the reason. But so, in that way, it is nice. We're here. It's a nice chance to just relax. There's no stress. You can't lose, much like a tailgate, you can't lose a bye week.
Do we reference the tweet from Yards Per Pass?
Sure.
How we were with the games falling the right way, we could be entering Sunday Night Football with the division wrapped up. I didn't get any info. I went to on that. Reed had his veterans luncheon on Saturday. I went to it because now I don't have a job and I don't have to work on Saturdays anymore. I went to it because I have not seen Reed since the end of last year, and I did say something to him. I'm like, how are you keeping your focus for Sunday? Because if you end up winning, you guys essentially have this thing wrapped up. And he was like, oh, we're focused. Like, because that's like one of the rare times where I've said something to Reed football related, because we could have this wrapped up by the time 49er kickoff happens, that we've won the division.
It's a hell of a thing. And that's all a byproduct of the AFC. Guys, and just what it's comprised of. And so I feel like as a bye-week exercise, and we've got a great show for you here tonight, at least I think it's fun, we're going to kind of look at tiering the AFC, looking at how we stack up amongst the contenders, the wild card threats. We're going to make fun of some people. It's going to be a good time. We have a whole slew of people who still somehow, even though we didn't lose, I just want to remind everybody that there are people who have it much, much worse than us, and it is okay to laugh at them.
Me, because I'm unemployed.
That's more sad than anything else. Like, I just see you puttering around. Like, what I'm going to do for Christmas, if you still don't have a job, is I'm just going to get you a bathrobe. Really let you steer into being like this weird, I could drink in the middle of the day, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know what to do with myself kind of guy, and just let's see if that's not the thing that just sends you full Lebowski.
I'd never be friends with any man that actively wears a robe. Let me put on this jacket. It's made out of a towel. And then you have the belt that goes right under your titties.
I think you might actually just be selling me more on the idea of a robe. It's a towel that I can just wear around.
No.
What if we replaced it with it? So here's the thing. It's trashy, like Big Lebowski. It's trashy if you wear a bathrobe everywhere.
Yes.
What if I were to replace that with a velour smoking jacket? The smile on your face.
I mean, I might get into cigars because it's slightly weird that it's like if you enjoy bourbon, which I do, you generally also enjoy cigars. I've never smoked a cigar before, and then you also like coffee. I do not like coffee at all.
See, Chris, I went through a degenerate unemployed phase in like a portion of my life. There was like a month and a half where I was, here's what happens. I lose my job with a local institution that provided me some severance. And I said, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I just broke up with my girlfriend. I took some cash and paid my car off. I literally only have to pay rent and utilities. It's the only thing that I owe. I don't know, maybe I should just slow play this thing. Not just take the first job that comes available, but I should find the right job. Really let it come to me and experience life and wait for the right fit for myself. And what I learned about myself over that period of time was that I can't be unemployed. I can't be without a purpose because I went to the gym every day. But I was a bachelor in a 600 square foot apartment. You can only clean it so many times. You can only do so many loads of laundry. And I would say by the time you finish that, you take a look around and you go, well, I'll mosey on down to the corner bar. It's just a quarter mile around I'll just walk down to Good Times and see what's going on there for lunch. I'll go grab a sandwich. And then you fall in with a group of elderly gentlemen who get dropped off by their wives because they don't want to deal with them in the middle of the day. They're there for early happy hour. And then you spend early happy hour there and you're having so much fun. All of a sudden, it's actual happy hour. And people start coming in that you know. And you go, oh, I haven't seen you in a long time. I'll have a beer with this guy. And then you realize, you know what? I'm kind of hungry. I could use some dinner. And then the late night crowd starts coming in. You go, oh, man, I haven't done shots with this guy in forever. Or I haven't seen this guy, but I should buy him a beer. And before you know it, Chris, you have put in a 10-hour shift at the bar. Now, you do that for about 6 weeks, and you really find out what you're made of. I feel like with the purchase of a velour smoking jacket, I could really give you a shove into trying to find yourself here.
I've already been through that when I lived in South Buffalo. I used to have a job that was 4 days a week. I'm off every Friday. So you would clean the apartment Friday morning, and then it's 1 o'clock, and you're like, I'm going to go see what's going down at Doc Sullivan's. Yeah. Because I know it's empty. There's a couple of stragglers. I'll have a spot at the bar. Because if I walk into Doc Sullivan's and the bar is full, I walk right out the door, and I go home. And I start getting, back in that day, you get liquored up on Jack and Cokes or Jim and Cokes.
I remember your ex-girlfriend making fun of you because you thought you were making cocktails, and she was like, all you're doing is putting bitters in a glass of pop with a glass of pop.
Yeah. Then Brett Coleman helps you out.
Guys, I love that we can just do this. Thank you for allowing us a platform to just have these conversations loosely based around sports. It's a lot of fun. So, when I take a look at this, like you're talking about bathrobes, we're talking about velour smoking jackets. What we're talking about is the AFC and where the Bills stand in it, and the fact that they're very, very close to clinching their division in almost laughable fashion. I mean, look at that.
Fucking hilarious.
Guys, according to ESPN, the winning percentages of each of the teams in the AFC East, the Bills are at .818, the Miami Dolphins at 400, and the Jets and Patriots are tied at .273. If you give that a scroll down, Chris, I believe we are the most pathetic division in all of football, aren't we?
We are, and I'm going to scroll back up. A lot of the NFC West is
that's a dead heat.
That's a
dead heat of mediocrity.
You got Arizona at 6-4, and then everyone else is 5-5. But as we scroll back up to the Bills division, look at that point differential on the far right.
Plus 106.
And then the Jets at -38 and the Dolphins at -40.
It almost isn't fair, but it is hilarious to laugh about.
You know what this is? This is like when New England ran the division.
Kind of.
It mostly looked like this outside of that one time Miami won the division.
And they won the division being tied with the Patriots. That's how good the Patriots were.
Yeah, and the Patriots missed the playoffs.
They missed the playoffs
with 11
wins. Matt Castle, remember the law firm, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was... we do have kind of a Patriots-style dynastic run, at least inside of our own division going here. It's pretty epic. I'm not going to lie to you. I do enjoy it. So with that in mind, and the fact that we're on the verge of clinching a playoff spot first before anybody else in the NFL, you start to look around at who the threats to your playoff hopes might be. And so to kind of tear this out, I want to start with the ones who are an actual threat to see the AFC title game this year. You know, the Buffalo Bills were obviously one of them. Because somehow, some way, even though the math doesn't math, right? $68 million in dead money. You have the second most in the entire NFL. Oddly enough, Chris, you know who's number one?
Who's that?
The Broncos, who are also, right now, a playoff team if the season were to end. Interesting that they, too, are having it, or at least maybe they were at one point. I believe they might be on the cusp of it. Because there's a lot of crap football being played in the AFC East. That 6-5 record of theirs, it's something. Uh-oh. Chris is up. So then you take a look at what we did at the skill positions this year. And you take a look at just how all of the missing bits and pieces that we've had over the course of the season without really having the depth necessary to fix it. We're somehow, some way right now looking like the most dangerous team in the entire conference. And, you know, there's a lot of Chiefs fans who have tried various methods of coping over the last week about all the things that the team, oh no, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. And when the playoffs roll around, maybe. But Sam Monson, Chris, who might have blocked us on Twitter, but...
he hasn't blocked us on Blue Sky.
We're back. We got to go remind him of all the reasons he blocked us in the first place. Sam Monson pointed out today on the WGR 550, a lot of you guys go back, WGR550.com. I rarely vamp any of those shows. I push any of them. He had an interesting spot where he talked about all the warts with Kansas City. And why, look, what they're doing, yes, they are the Kansas City Chiefs, and we can't discount the fact that they do seem to find a second gear in the playoffs. But at the same time, statistically, analytically, just in terms of snap counts taken by under-talented or at least underwhelming players, there's a lot going on there that's going to be really difficult, even with the players that they have coming back from injury. There's a lot there that's going to be difficult for them to overcome. And I think that what we just saw in this game is that a diluted Bills team is still just as strong, if not stronger, than a slightly diluted Chiefs team. And that's going to be a problem for them. And so in that way, you look at Buffalo and you go, sure. Unless this thing philosophically comes off the rails, which we've seen, it still could. Chris, this thing could still go. Wholesale Ryan Fitzpatrick, what was that, we gave him a contract extension in 2011.
Yes.
And then he immediately got hurt and we lost the last, 6 straight games? 6 straight games to end that season. In fact, no, I think we lost all of them except for one. I think we started the season 5-1 and then didn't win another game until December, I want to say.
Yeah. No, we didn't. I specifically remember we beat Washington on Halloween or the day before Halloween.
Yeah, we shut him out and he broke his ribs in that game.
And then we didn't win a game the rest of the way.
Yeah, he broke his ribs in that game and then everything was downhill from there. So it could still turn into a pumpkin, but man, it would take a real act of God, right? And the fact that you have Josh Allen, like on days when the offense is cooking so poorly that you'd probably accuse him of being able to scorch the water for spaghetti. I mean, they let's face it, they're capable of that. Remember, Chris, 9 of 30 passing against Houston?
Yes.
9 of 30. Because of the defense and because of his big playability, you're always going to be within striking distance of a win. The game against the Ravens being an outlier, I mean, there's a reason that we had the record. Like, what was it, consecutive games? We set the record of consecutive games without losing by more than a single score.
Yes.
That's a Josh Allen stat. Pure and simple. And as long as we have him and we have half of the defense we have, you're in for a rock fight if you go up against Buffalo. Behind them is the Kansas City Chiefs. And despite what some of the lunatic fringe of their fan base will tell you, there's no 4D chess going on there. You lost a football game. And in the process, we learned a few things about you. We learned that the new look wide receiver core that they have there hasn't developed the anticipation that they need to have with Patrick Mahomes. They certainly don't know what the hell to do when he scrambles. Like, that was one of the most surprising things of all this to me, Chris, was watching them in that game and then going back and rewatching the Chiefs game and seeing that a lot of their, like, obviously 2 turnovers, but also a lot of negative plays, a lot of incomplete passes, a lot of scrambles that ended up just being throwaways were made because you have wide receivers who don't really know where to be when Patrick Mahomes needs you to make yourself available. You know, Travis Kelce's treated like a cottage industry, but at the same time, these guys aren't picking him up the way that they usually do. And some of that's on just their unfamiliarity. You know, Hopkins just got there, and Juju Smith-Schuster came back, but I don't know what his upshot is at this point. I mean, he was an absolute dog up there in New England. They put him down like Old Yeller and shipped him back. And Kansas City took him because that underscores how desperate they are. You know, it's the, hey, this guy knows the scheme. Plain and simple. He knows the scheme, sort of, and we'll figure out if he's useful or not. Xavier Worthy's a rookie. I wouldn't expect him to have excellent chemistry with Patrick Mahomes right out of the gate. I just wouldn't. Not in a complicated offense. And I don't know. Their offensive line is surprisingly malleable. In years past, it used to be their team just mauling everybody. Because can you Google for me, where did Orlando Brown go? Left tackle Orlando Brown. Where is he currently playing football?
Cincinnati.
And scroll down. I want to confirm this. Go down. Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, so they couldn't reach a deal with him. He signs with the Chiefs, wins the Super Bowl. Woo! He signs a giant contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, that team is a lost cause. But also, it really was subtraction by subtraction. You didn't pay. You opted not to pay him. You let him walk, and now Wanya Morris is over there being your left tackle, and he stinks. He stinks on ice. He stinks in a way that I don't know they make. Chris, I always joke, like, when someone really lights up a bathroom somewhere, there's bathroom spray, but it doesn't work, right? Like, you can spray that lemon-scented Glade, but now you just have the bathroom.
I believe that we went over this on Sunday with your children.
Where Chris was explaining to my kids.
I told your children that I'm going to destroy your bathroom. And
my son repeated that, He literally was like, Daddy, Chris destroyed the bathroom. I go, don't say that. Don't say that to anybody.
Well, I came out and I looked at Jack and I was like, don't go in there until at least Tuesday.
He stinks so badly that there's no amount of Glade that could cover him up. And then Juwan Taylor on the other side has been disappointing this year. Most of the pressures.
Because he leaves his sets early?
He's leaving his sets early because he's bad at his job. Most of the pressures that Kansas City has given up they've come on the edges. That interior offensive line is still very good, despite what the Bills did to him in this last game. And I think that that's a piece of this you can't fix. There's no help coming. It's just your tackles aren't very good. So that's becoming an Achilles heel of this offense, and it's what allows Kansas City's opponents to constantly help keep pace in some of these games where they used to just be boat races. I don't know. They have a megastar quarterback, great coaching, and no matter what their warts are, they're always a threat to come from behind and win. 7 times this year, Chris, they've had to come from behind and win a game. And they've trailed at halftime in 4 of them. So they're always going to be in this position. They're just talented enough to climb out of the hole unless they're also playing a quarterback with the talent and a team with the talent like the Buffalo Bills. And then you've got Baltimore. The Ravens started this season cold. And when I say cold, Chris, I'm talking like...
What, they started 0-3, 0-2?
0-2 and almost 0-3 because they tried real hard to blow that Dallas game. And then they found themselves against Buffalo and went on a win streak right until they lost to the Cleveland Browns. And now they're looking the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so
they do have look at that. They got a tough stretch to end it there. Chargers, Eagles.
But so scroll up. See, because this is the part that I like about football. You then get to take a step back and go, okay, you won these games, lost these games, but in the early season, there's no real context you can apply to it. That's why betting stinks. I wouldn't do it early in the season. But also, that's where you make money because Vegas hasn't really figured out what the teams are either. Cincinnati, we now know, stinks. And at the same time, they had to go to overtime with them. Washington is good. Tampa Bay, mediocre. Cleveland is bad. Denver, mediocre. You want to scroll up, Chris? Dallas is a mediocre football team.
They were
mediocre. Now
you have to factor in that Dak Prescott done for the year. You're either playing Cooper Rush or Trey Lance.
But they were still bad.
Yes.
They still weren't good. The Raiders, you lost to the Raiders, and they lost to the Chiefs. The win percentage of those teams is low. I think it would surprise people if you saw it on paper. Now scroll down. For all the flack the Bills take, the win percentage of their opponents is not great. And now you look, they're going to go out and play the Chargers, the Eagles, then the Giants, Steelers, Texans, and Cleveland again. I mean, their schedule's a little soft. And here's the problem. A lot of those games are going to end up closer than they should be. They might even lose to Pittsburgh again. Because look at these defensive statistics. 26th in yards and 23rd in scoring prevention. 27th in first downs allowed per game. 32nd in passing yards against, but also 32nd in attempts against. Which means people aren't trying to throw the ball. Like, they have the least number, like the smallest number of passing attempts against them. And at the same time, everyone's just, it's embarrassing what's going on up there with the Ravens. And they gave up, they managed to beat the Bengals twice while Burrow had 400 yards passing. I mean, that's more an indictment of how much that team sucks than a kudos for the Ravens.
You know what's blowing my mind on these? To break down the fourth wall, right now we have the Ravens schedule up here on this TV that Drew's looking at from ESPN.com. And we're looking at their remaining schedule. And my mind is blown with who they're playing, where they're playing, and the difference in ticket sales. Did you notice that?
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Look at that. So guys, sales at Los Angeles right now, Monday Night Football on ESPN, tickets as low as $67. Against the Eagles at home in Baltimore, tickets as low as $321. On the road against the Giants, your tickets could be as low as $53. That means that somewhere in that stadium there is a $20 ticket to be had.
Yeah.
Then they go to play Pittsburgh. It's 214, 198 against Houston, and then down to 52 in the season finale against. That is wild.
I would say if you're at Houston, if you're a Ravens fan and you want to check out Houston and Baltimore, you should consider going to the game at $198 because when you're at the game paying $198 a ticket, there's no buffering because that game's on Netflix.
I'm happy you mentioned that. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that the Ravens are the second highest scoring unit in football right now, they'd be sunk. And I don't know if the way that they're playing football, like, does that translate to the postseason and late in the year when the weather starts to get shitty and they got to play games outside. I don't know. Quality defense and good cornerback play. Teams like Cleveland and Pittsburgh, they're absolutely capable of coming up short. Oh, and apparently Justin Tucker's broken. That's a new thing. That's cool for them. He's having the worst season of his pro career. And then there's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, I don't know what to think of them. They shouldn't be good. They're painfully mediocre on offense, which is underscored by the fact that 4 of the last 6 games they've thrown for under 200 yards. I shouldn't say painfully mediocre. What I should say is unexplosive. Uptick in turnovers. You know, that was originally one of the reasons that I liked them coming out of the AFC North. And then I take a look at it and I go, wait a minute. You know, Justin Fields wasn't throwing the ball a ton. He had a couple fumbles here and there, or at least people did. But then you look at this and say, okay, now you're averaging almost 2 turnovers a game. That's not great. But the one thing that they do have going for them is that defense is just a monster, right? Opportunistic secondary, amazing pass rush, at least 1 turnover in all but 2 games, and they are averaging 2 takeaways per game over the last month. So, I mean, that's... Chris, you can't fight that.
Never count out a Mike Tomlin coach team.
No.
He knows how... Say what you want about Tomlin, but that fucking guy knows how to coach his team. He's never been below 500 ever as a coach. Now, looking at their schedule to close things out, they got double dips against Ohio with Cleveland and Cincinnati left on the schedule, plus Baltimore, Kansas City, Philadelphia. Well, they're going to have a tough finish to the season. Divisional games, regardless if you're good or bad, is always a challenge.
Unless you're the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East. But I digress. I think that they're going to have a tough go, but I'm looking at that Week 17 game, the Christmas Eve game on Netflix. There is a chance that game is for the 1 seed. If the Steelers take care of business and the Chiefs hold serve and they don't fumble another game away, that game probably determines who gets the 1, which is crazy to think about.
I mean, not to bring it up again, but you know how close of a drive it is from Pittsburgh to Cleveland. Thursday night, tomorrow night, tell me tickets are as low as $33.
Are you just going to go?
I would, if I was a Pittsburgh fan, I'm going to that football game.
Yeah, that place is going to have a lot of terrible towels swinging around in it. So, Chris, out of that group, who scares you the most when you're looking at the playoff field?
I mean, we're going to say it every season, but the way I want my playoff picture to unfold is because I was telling shout out to my father. Today's his birthday. I was talking to him on the phone, and he's already asking me about playoffs. That's how in tune my dad is. He knows that the Bills are cruising to the playoffs the way they are. And I said, you want to be able to have a playoff position where you're not having a divisional game against Baltimore and then a AFC title game against Kansas City. You don't want to have that situation happen. You just want to be able to play. I would prefer to play Kansas City in the playoffs just for that. In case Buffalo wins the Super Bowl, you can say, well, we slayed the dragon on the way. So, if the Bills got to the Super Bowl.
Oh, you think I need that? No.
If you think Buffalo's going to the Super Bowl and we get there without playing Kansas City, Nick Wright's going to be insufferable on TV claiming that our Super Bowl win would not matter because we didn't play the Chiefs.
Do people listen to that guy?
Yes. His podcast is better than his TV show.
Well, of course it is.
Yes. When we get to the playoffs, I don't want to play Baltimore and Kansas City. I'd rather play one of them.
Do you know what this nonsense sounds like to me? This sounds to me like those people who are like, "Oh no, I don't want to play the Kansas City Chiefs when they're all banged up because then the win wouldn't mean as much." Yes, it would. You're an idiot. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That sentiment is what costs you Super Bowls. You don't think that there's a multitude of like Super Bowl teams that have won over the years because they just played the right mix of guys at the right time? Like, oh, hey, I kind of sloughed my way into the Super Bowl. Whoops. Not my fault, everybody who's great lost.
It happened in baseball this year. Do you know who the Yankees played on the way to the World Series?
Who?
They played Cleveland and Detroit.
Okay, and so then they met the Dodgers and got whomped?
Yeah.
They got whomped up on?
Or no. I'm sorry. I was wrong on that. Because
Baltimore.
No, not Baltimore. Kansas City. Because Cleveland and Detroit, get this, Cleveland and Detroit, same division in baseball.
Different divisions in football?
Yes, and conferences. Same division in baseball. Yeah. How about this?
How does that work?
How about this?
These leagues need to get together and figure this shit out.
It's completely different. It's baseball.
We need to draw state lines.
Baseball, Cleveland and Detroit, same division. This is how I know I fucked up. Cleveland and Detroit, same division. Never played before this year in the playoffs. How fucked up is that?
Wow.
Yeah. That's Kansas City. They had to play Cleveland and Kansas City. And that's how the Yankees got to the World Series.
Now I'm going to hit you with a group of teams here, and despite them being the 4 seed, I did leave them out. The Houston Texans, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Colts, and the Dolphins round out the on the bubble franchises. First of all, the Dolphins. Saw 'em, beat them, continue to beat them. We womp on these guys. They have single-digit playoff odds at 4-6. The Colts, saw 'em, beat them. I'm not concerned at all, and in fact, I'm even less concerned with Anthony Richardson at the quarterback. I'd be more intimidated by that football team if they were to have rolled out Joe Flacco and Joe Flacco played well. But he's not.
I just had to check on the Dolphins' schedule that they're still under the same issue of they can't beat good football teams. That's what it was last year.
And then the Broncos, the Chargers, the Texans. I mean, the Texans, we should have waxed them in that game. And the Texans haven't looked overly impressive in any of the recent games.
No, we shouldn't have waxed them. However, we played as bad of a football game as we could play. And Houston was still giving us the game. We don't want to win this. Here, you take this and win this. And we went, no.
No, I insist.
I insist you win this game.
It was Dumb and Dumber when they're in those like the orange and blue tuxedos.
Yes.
And they just keep trying to let the other one go to the door first.
Yes. Yeah, Houston has not looked you would think that they would make that leap. What was it? Second year DeMeco Ryan, second year CJ Stroud. You think that they would make that leap into the conversation of Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City, and they haven't done that.
Well, I think the problem is you look at the health of look at the health and the breakup of familiarity of their wide receiver core. Like, first of all, CJ Stroud didn't take a giant jump forward. And at the same time, Tank Dell, coming off that injury, just does not look explosive. Now, this is what happens, right? Von Miller, who was that defensive end we signed a long time ago who was bad in his first season but got a little bit better the next year? He had a beard. We were like, oh, we knew you tore your ACL, but we're signing you anyway.
Mark Anderson.
No. That guy just continued to suck, and then I think he died.
What year?
Or at least in an NFL sense.
What year is this? We have Google.
It was Sean McDermott was here. So I want to say 2019. 2019 Buffalo Bills. But I think Tank Dell is really struggling. I think the hamstring issue has set Nico Collins back in a way that he's still useful, but he's just a little slower, which crushes a certain aspect of his game. I think that Joe Mixon is carrying that team quietly. Like, Joe Mixon is having a resurgence down there, but he's one guy. It's a running back, and a running back, unfortunately, can't win you a Super Bowl on his own.
You recognize any of those names?
Let's see. Who do we got on the defensive line?
Not Star Latulele.
No, it's not him.
Or Trent Murphy.
Trent Murphy. Yeah, Trent Murphy. His first year, he was coming off an ACL tear.
There you go.
So, see, look, I still got it. But in that way, the Texans don't scare me because I think they're struggling to cope with the fact that growth isn't linear. So they between injuries and setbacks, and then obviously the injuries on the offensive line, they lost Kenyon Green, their guard. I think their line play has not been great. There's a lot going on there that you don't love. The Chargers, I think that their approach to play small ball helps them, but it also wastes a lot of what Herbert does well. They run the ball a ton. They throw off play action. None of their wide receivers matter, but they don't need them to matter. And that's okay, but that unexplosive style of football can't win you all the games. And then the Broncos, 6-5. I mean, it's
you got a rookie quarterback.
You have a rookie quarterback. You can take that as far as you can, but there's a shelf life on that. I got a hot take. Baltimore's defense is getting exposed while ours seems to be improving every single week.
And getting healthy.
I'm not nearly as afraid of seeing them in the playoffs as I think some people out there are. I actually think Pittsburgh would be a far worse matchup for us than a team like Baltimore or Kansas City doing it over again. I don't know. I think that if we were to go up against Pittsburgh, all the creative bits of our offense that we've been able to manufacture here disappear because they have an excellent defense with really good linebacker play, really good safety play, and just high pressure generating defensive line. Joey Porter Jr. is one of the best cornerbacks in football. There's so much going on there defensively that it takes, like Chris, it just runs counter to everything we're good at. And at the same time, in the offensive phase, this isn't a team that thinks that they're going to air it out on us, but they wouldn't try, and that's the problem. They would double down into running the football, throwing to tight ends, playing small ball, and it would get hard because we can't operate a quick strike offense. I could see a game where we play them 9 times out of 10, we score fewer than 21 points. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
I really don't like this. Might be the most open of a look we've had at this, Chris. And it's interesting because I went all the way back. 1991. 1991, the Bills were 10-2. By week 13, the Bills were 10-2 after coming off a bye. We're going to go into our bye week with an opportunity to get there when we come out of it for the first time since 1991. It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yes, considering what we have to work with.
Now, Chris, I need you to cue the drop up, the 5K drop for me. There's a lot here. There's a lot that's going to happen. We're going to sit back and we're going to watch football this weekend. Obviously, there's some games on the slate that and you root against certain people. You look at who has the upshot and who has a solid track forward. Chris, we think our schedule's hard as Bills fans. When you look at remaining strength of schedule, you go to tankathon.com. It takes in current season win percentage. Denver's schedule is just as difficult as ours, because they play the Kansas City Chiefs, they play the Chargers, they play they have to play the Bengals. They have to play some teams. Now, maybe they'll run the table, but I doubt it. And that's a tough one, especially with 2 division games left. And then you take a look, and I'm just looking at, like, you've got some teams like the Bears who are just fucked. They've got the Lions twice. They've got the Vikings twice. Then they play Green Bay. Then they play San Francisco. Then they play the Seahawks. Chris, we were talking about it off air. They might get the number 1 seed again.
Yes.
The number 1 seed in the NFL draft might be Chicago's again. It would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And it might also be the best thing for that franchise, even if it sucks to watch. But as you go down, all of the teams I just talked about, Baltimore has a pretty easy strength of schedule, but even that's not a no-brainer for them because of the state of their defense. Everybody else who we just talked about as potential contenders in the AFC has a decent go of things here. There's no cakewalks. And so in that way, I really like where Buffalo is to try to stay. I mean, if you just want to put a number on it, Pittsburgh has a 15th hardest schedule left in football. Kansas City 17th. Denver's 23rd. The Bills are 24th. Houston's the 27th. Houston could find themselves in trouble because they're going to win their division, but then play who? Like, that could be a game where they get rolled in the wild card round, like what we almost did to them in 2019.
Didn't they get rolled by Cleveland, or did they roll Cleveland like 2 years ago?
It was Cleveland. Yeah, it was them setting Cleveland on fire. I remember that. That's how Houston found itself in the division round playing Baltimore. But yeah, it's not going to get any easier out here for these guys. And with that in mind, you have to love it from a Bills perspective, because at least we know that we not only have we know that we at least have an offense that works. We know that our defense is sound. We know that our coach is showing some balls. And we know that if 17 decides to go nuclear, there's nothing that anybody can do about it. Now, before we get out of here, I feel like we're obligated to do. The Bills haven't lost in a while, and I feel like I'm getting rusty. For the bye week purposes, I want to end the show.
Fuck you both. Your lives are so fucked.
I got happy there.
For bye week purposes, I feel like it's only fitting that we leave you guys with another edition of People Who Have It Worse Than Bills Fans.
Fuck you both. Your lives are so fucking pathetic. I ran a charity $15K to raise awareness for it, you fucking losers.
And I have to start this, Chris, with wide receiver Devante Adams. You want to talk about making fun of people who are having a bad time? Imagine the life of Devante Adams. You had the world by the balls when you played for the Green Bay Packers. And then you overplayed your hand and said, well, you don't want to pay me. I will go play. I'll go play anywhere. I'll go play for whoever pays me. And he decided to play for the Raiders. And everyone's like, oh, happy to be here. Do I look happy? Does he look happy now, Chris?
No.
He got his money and he got his wish. And then he got traded to the New York Jets to go play with his favorite quarterback. Unless maybe not. Chris, when was the trade deadline?
Election day.
Okay, so what is that? November 4th.
Yes.
So if you look, give me a Google on this. The Jets' schedule, how many games has he gotten to play with Aaron Rodgers?
Not a lot.
Here's why I ask. For those of you paying attention, Woody Johnson apparently is was trying, and now that there's no one standing in his way, probably will bench Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, which is the whole reason Devante Adams went to the city to begin with. So now, where are we here? Scroll up. If you can for me, it was the Pittsburgh game. Okay. So 10-20, 10-27 to the Houston game. So there's 3. And in there, you absorb 2 losses, a victory, and then what? Catastrophic loss to the Cardinals. Lost to Indy this past weekend. Now the team's going to go. So you have had 5 games with your boy. The reason you're here, Aaron Rodgers. And there's a real threat, Chris, that by the time week 13 rolls around, he's catching passes from Tyrod Taylor.
I like it.
Here's the best part about the Devante Adams saga. So not only did you not get what you wanted, you went from one crap team to another crap team with no future. You're the only one left. You will be the cheese standing alone. Aaron Rodgers is going to opt out of his deal and leave the Jets holding the bag on like $40 million of dead money next year. There's no GM. There's no coach. You don't know any of the people who were here when you were brought into the organization, but you're still under contract. Chris, I have this hilarious scenario in my head where Devante Adams wants to demand a trade. Who does he take it to? I could picture him standing in HR. Like he walks in. There's a bunch of husky typists just kind of sitting there, clacking away. Maybe a big beehive hairdo. He goes, "Hey, hello. My name's Devante. I work here." They'd be like, "Oh yeah, what do you do here?" "Oh, I work here. I'm actually on the team, and I need to know is it in the handbook?" He's like, "I need to know who do I go to request a trade? Because right now it's just Woody Johnson, and he won't answer my agent's phone calls." And they're gonna be like, "Here's the employee handbook. Why don't you familiarize yourself?"
I think if you're Devante Adams, if you want to facilitate a trade as soon as the season ends, you have to go to HR at Johnson & Johnson. Like, not even the Jets. You go to Johnson & Johnson.
You think that'll get Woody's
HR.
attention?
Yeah.
Woody Johnson's already serving as an ambassador somewhere. He can't get a hold of him. He's out of the country.
Yeah.
Devante Adams just has to wait. He has to sit there and just wait. Like, it's like you wrote out your 2-week notice, but there's no one to quit to.
Yeah.
I wonder if he just stopped showing up. Would they no-call, no-show him?
Probably.
Is that a thing in the NFL?
Probably.
I bet you if it was, Devante Adams would be wishing he could do it. It's hilarious, and it's awesome to see that our trade for Amari Cooper couldn't be going better, right? I mean, the wrist injury aside, every time they talk to him, Chris, he's a lot more soft-spoken than I would have anticipated.
Yes.
He's more reserved. He's a little bit more laid back. He's quiet. I would not have expected that of an NFL wide receiver. But you have to line up. If you look at those 2 trades that were made just like hours apart from each other, you got to say the Bills got the better end of the stick on that one, and Amari Cooper got the better end of the stick on that one. Also, you know who else has it? You know who else is kind of in the dumps? The guys who negotiated the Netflix deal to broadcast the Christmas game.
Did you watch that fight? I didn't see a lick of it.
Here's what happened to me. I tried to watch that fight. I watched the undercards, and it was fine. I mean, it wasn't fine. The feed sucked. But there was a fight between 2 women that was one of the best boxing matches I've seen in a long time. And the problem with it is that the wrong person, like, here you do have, like, people kind of applaud these things. They say, "Oh, they're facades. They're not real boxing." And it's like, no, probably not, but it's getting boxing talked about. Boxing is a dying sport. UFC usurped the entire audience. So as a fight sport, boxing needs every kind of leg up it can get. And this event and events like it are huge for the sport, getting it visibility, getting back into the zeitgeist. And what pisses me off is that they chose this moment to highlight everything that sucks about boxing. All of these fights went to decisions that ultimately ran counter to what people's own eyeballs told them they just saw. And that's what has doomed boxing for the last 20 years. And it pisses me off that that's how this went. That and the quality of the stream itself. Chris, that thing was a mess. Now, I'm not going to say I pirated it. I'm going to say someone who, Chris, the term swim, someone who isn't me.
Okay.
Someone who isn't me pirated the stream.
I know who that is.
And told me that it was terrible. It froze. Sometimes it crashed. It outrightly would just leave people at the Netflix screen, just circling with nothing on TV. It was an embarrassment. And I saw the last undercard, and then because I'm an old man, just passed out. And I woke up, and it was 2:00 in the morning, and I was still on the couch. I was like, sons of bitches, I missed the fight, the thing that I stayed up all night for. So I immediately open a group chat, and I see Ryan Lasel going, woof, what a fight, and just deriding like what a bunch of horse shit it was. And I said, oh, okay. I don't feel like I missed anything now. I even messaged him. I was like, I slept through it. He goes, you didn't miss much. That aside, those technical issues, Chris, are going to be a MFer when it comes to airing Chris. Like, imagine being the salesman who pitched the NFL. Don't worry, guys. We can totally broadcast an NFL football game. It's going to have millions of live viewers. It's going to be great. And then you're sitting there in your condo watching this disaster just play out going, fuck. It's that Will Arnett, right? The Will Arnett from Arrested Development. I've made a terrible mistake. The guy's probably polishing his resume as we speak.
So because I'm a huge nerd, I'm pulling this up because of what happened. I'm going to try to find out who's doing the Netflix games, because Netflix doesn't have the production structure to broadcast the game. It's outsourced to a NBC, CBS, a Fox, Amazon Prime. So I'm wondering if at a flip of the switch, you could just send that feed to your Fox station if Fox is producing the game, or if CBS is producing the game. Flip of the switch, nope, we're sending this out to every CBS affiliate. So I'd like to know.
Yeah, CBS.
Yeah, CBS is going to produce the games on Christmas. So you would think at a flip of the switch, as soon as that fucking dial is spinning on Netflix, that Goodell makes a call and to the truck and just goes, you flip that switch to the CBS feed, and then just you're fucking watching, I don't know what's on CBS. You're watching 60 Minutes daytime, and then all of a sudden the CJ Stroud pops up on your television. And what happened? Oh, it's fucked up on Netflix. So we have to send the stream down the line to the CBS affiliates everywhere, and you just get interrupted with football.
Not only that, but then you know what happens like later that night? The guys who pitched this, right? The pitchmen who negotiated this deal for Netflix to land that thing, they come home to their condo, they open the door, they go to put some groceries down on the counter, and it's like the end of what's that movie with Matt? I can see it now.
Rounders.
No. Matt Damon and Jack Nicholson and the guy who only dates 20-year-olds.
Leo
DiCaprio. What is The Departed?
Okay.
When Matt Damon just walks into his apartment and gets shot in the face. He just gets shot in the face by what is it from Four Brothers? God, what's the actor? Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Yep.
Marky Mark just shoots him in the face.
Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo. I hate you.
Mark Wahlberg.
You know exactly who you're talking about.
Wahlberg.
Can you imagine Mark Ruffalo trying to play a tough guy in a movie?
Nah, he's a huge. We all know Mark Ruffalo's a huge pussy.
It's hilarious, but I can picture all of those guys getting executed in their apartments, just like the end of The Departed. And you know who else has it worse than Bills fans entering the bye week, Chris? Everybody. Every single NFL football fan out there. We've got chicken wings, right? We've got Josh Allen. We're 9-2. Kick rocks. You all suck. Everything about our lives is great, and you can all kiss our ass.
And it's getting better.
I love it. You love it. And you guys listening at home love it. I can't wait to see more of it. We're just going to have to wait a weekend and let this all run its course. I can't wait to watch a bunch of guys go out there and struggle to keep pace with us. But for now, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Rock Pile Report.